This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Sefer Daniel, Part 9. We spoke about last week Avraham Avinu. Remember Avraham Avinu? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were thrown into the fire, the furnace. And it was very similar to what happened with Avraham Avinu. We actually learned there was one big difference between Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah and Avraham. Both were saved. Both had miracles happen to them. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved Avraham Avinu personally, not an angel. He went down and saved Avraham Avinu. As opposed to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were saved by the angel Gabriel. Gabriel remembers. So, why? Why is it Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are saved by an angel and Avraham Avinu is saved by God Himself? Because the mitzvah of Avraham Avinu was even more pure. Do you know why, Sivan? Okay. The pure mitzvah of Avraham Avinu was very different than Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Both did great mitzvot. It was an amazing thing because it was sacrificing themselves. Not an easy thing to do. But the mitzvah of Avraham Avinu was even more special for several reasons. Reason number one, he didn't have friends with him. Nobody was on his side. He didn't have two other people who said, we're together with you. And it's much harder to do things when everybody is doing something different. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought Avram's mother was with him.
Well, she wasn't sacrificing herself, right? It was Avraham Avinu sacrificing, and his mother didn't necessarily support the methods of Avraham Avinu. So in a certain sense, it was pretty different. Now, we'll also remember Avraham Avinu was pretty strong, because when Nimrod took Avraham Avinu, he said to him, we're going to bow down to my avodah zarah. My avodah zarah is the fire. We will bow to fire. Avraham Avinu said, you know what? I have an idea. Why don't we bow down to water? Because water is better than fire, since the water extinguishes the fire. So Nimrod said to Avraham, so we bow down to the water. Avraham said, wait a second. I just came up with a new idea. We don't have to bow down to water. We could bow down to the clouds, because the clouds hold the water. So let's bow down to the clouds. So Nimrod said, okay, we'll bow down to the clouds, as long as you bow down. He says, but wait, the wind blows the clouds away. When there's a snowstorm or there's rain, the wind comes and scatters the clouds. Maybe we should bow to the wind.
They can't see it.
He says, okay, so let's bow to the wind. You can bow down to the wind. The winds, when you hear the winds blowing, you can bow down to it. He says, we'll bow down to the winds. He says, no, but we can't bow down to the wind, because people are better than the wind, because we hold the wind inside our body. And we contain the wind. He says, so let's bow down to people. You keep bugging me. Nimrod looks at him and says, forget you. You're trying to bother me with your words, badger me. You know what? I bow down to the fire. And if your God is stronger than the fire, let Him save you from the fire. So you see, Nimrod was very upset at Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu wasn't scared. He was fine. Now, at this point, did Avraham Avinu have children? No, he didn't have any children. So if he would have died, who would have continued the promise of continuing the name of God into the world? There would be nobody. Nobody would be left to go ahead and to carry on the legacy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in a certain sense, Avraham Avinu could have said, wait, I shouldn't die, because then who's going to do what I'm doing? He didn't make those calculations. It was so pure, the mitzvah. And finally, the reason why it was so special is because there was another major difference between Avraham Avinu and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And this comes from a story about Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, if you remember, when Moshe Rabbeinu went to receive the Torah, he went up to Shamayim. He went up to the heavens. And when he went up, were all the angels happy to see Avraham Avinu? No, they were all upset. They turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu a little bit angry, They said, God, why are you giving the Torah to this person? What's he doing here? God says he's here for the Torah. But why give him the Torah? We could have the Torah. We're angels. We'll fulfill everything and we'll do it right. Unlike humans, they'll make mistakes and do averot. We'll keep the Torah perfectly, like the way it's supposed to be kept. So God doesn't respond to them. Interestingly, He turns to Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu, why don't you answer them? Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't say a word. He's afraid. He says to God, I should answer. I'm afraid of them. I'm afraid of the angels. They can burn me up with the breath. They could go, and the whole thing will be fire and burn everything about me. I'm afraid of the angels. So God said, don't worry, hold on to my throne. I'll protect you. Right? And Moshe Rabbeinu did respond to them. Moshe Rabbeinu responded to them that the mitzvot were designed for Am Yisrael, for us. It was made for us. How are angels going to keep the mitzvot? But the question is like this. Was Moshe Rabbeinu stronger than the angels or weaker than the angels? Who was stronger? Who was stronger from the story?
I think Moshe.
From the story. You see that Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of the angels. That means the angels were stronger than Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? So let me ask you a question. In this story, Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid. But later on, it says that there was one angel that was waiting patiently and excitedly for the day that Moshe Rabbeinu would leave this world. That he would be able to take the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. This was Samech Mem, the angel of death. He was excited. Oh, when will the day finally come where I could take his life, where I could take his neshama? He's always doing mitzvot. This person, this Moshe Rabbeinu. Sofer Ashal Tzaddik umvakesh le'amito. He's looking to see when the Tzaddik's time is up so he can finally do this. And sure enough, Acharei 120 years, Moshe Rabbeinu 120 years old, the 7th day of Adar, God says to Samech Mem, to the angel of death, the time has come for the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu to return to heavens. He performed a beautiful life. He didn't sin. His life was precious. And now it's his turn to come to Olam Haba, to Gan Eden. Samech Mem, the angel of death, was excited. Oh, I finally get the chance to take the life of Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, Hagar Hagorato, he wore his belt, he dressed himself up in anger, he took his sword and was ready to come down to take the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, he approached the room that Moshe Rabbeinu was in, and what was Moshe Rabbeinu doing? What do you think? He was playing video games. He was sitting and learning Torah. He was sitting and writing Sfarim. He was writing Sefer Torah, 13 Sefer Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to look up. He knew, he felt that the Malach HaMavet was present. Malach HaMavet sees Moshe Rabbeinu and his radiance. There was this shine like the sun came from Moshe Rabbeinu. You couldn't look at him. Even the angels couldn't look at Moshe Rabbeinu. And Malach HaMavet was scared not just to move, to say anything. He couldn't even say any words. He couldn't get words out of his mouth. Until Moshe Rabbeinu started the conversation without even looking at him, because you're not allowed to look at the face of a Rasha. So Moshe Rabbeinu is still writing, and he says a pasuk in Yeshaya, En shalom amar Hashem lareshaim. There is no shalom, there is no hello to those that are wicked. That was his way of introducing himself to Malach HaMavet. Malach HaMavet, very nervous, turns to Moshe and says, I am here to take your neshama. Moshe Rabbeinu is not intimidated. He says, who sent you? He says, Borei Olam sent me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He gave me this mission. He says, my neshama I am not giving to you. Not that he was going against orders from God. He said, I'm not giving to you my neshama. It stays with me. He says, no. I am commanded over all the neshamot to take them. Everybody that enters into this world, I take him out of this world. He says, I'm not like everybody else. He says, how are you different than everybody else? And Moshe Rabbeinu starts explaining, when I was born with a glow. I was born with Brit Milah. My parents saw that there was something special about me. When I was 3 months old, I had a prophecy that I will receive the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I went into the palace of Paro and I took the crown off of his head. At 80 years old, I went down to Egypt, this week's parasha, and I performed miracles. 10 miracles on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I took the Jews out of Egypt in broad daylight when the Egyptians were witnessing and couldn't do anything to stop us. And I left and I split the sea into 12 different sections, 12 different lanes. We left, I took water that was bitter and I made it sweet. And then I went up to Shamayim to receive the Torah, where the angels were residing. And I was able to escape the wrath and the enemies. And not only that, I took secrets from the heavens and revealed it to people that were never known before. And after the giving of the Torah, I fought 2 great kings, Sihon and Og, where the Mabul itself was not even able to reach their ankles. And nothing happened to them during the times of the Mabul. And I personally killed them. I smote them with the staff and the might of the Torah and the mitzvot. And now I'm 120 years old, and you come to take my neshama, I will not give you my neshama. The angel of death hears all this, and he sees Moshe Rabbeinu take the staff with Shema Meforash, ready to hit him. He runs for his life. He's afraid. He's afraid of Moshe Rabbeinu. Says he goes up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God said, I sent you on a mission. What happened? He says, I can't take his neshama. I'm too scared. I'm not... God said, I sent you there, you're going to go again. Now, why does God send him? God knows that he can't take the neshama. He knows that no angel could take the neshama. Why is he sending him there? He wants him to see with his own 2 eyes. Well, many eyes actually. But he wants him to see with his eyes that Moshe Rabbeinu is more powerful than him. He wanted him to see that. So he sent him down one time. He sent him down again to show him, you have no power against Moshe Rabbeinu. He comes down a second time and he says, okay, this time I'm ready, I'm prepared, I'm going to take his neshama. He takes out his sword and he kind of closes his eyes like he's nervous and he runs towards Moshe. He lunges at him. Moshe Rabbeinu takes the staff and hits him with all of his might and wipes him out. He starts flying away. The Malach HaMavet, the Midrash says, he starts running out. Moshe Rabbeinu runs after him. He says, I'm not going back down there. I'm not going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Until HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself has to talk to Moshe and talks to the neshama and says, Biti, your time has come. You've done your purpose in the world. And the neshama was happy to leave this world. Left with the kiss of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama was taken up. My question is though, wait a second. Before we said, remember Gabriel, what did we say before? Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai. And who was stronger, him or the angels? The angels. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of the angels when he went up to receive the Torah. Now, the angels, the most frightening of all the angels, is scared of Moshe Rabbeinu. Wait a second, what happened? How come first it was like this and now it's like this? What's the difference before and what's the difference now?
When the first case, he was in all their property, so
That's a good answer. He's in their home court.
Yeah, and with Samach men, he's meant to be in the Shemayim, not down here.
Right, so you're saying that because it was home court advantage. That's one explanation, but it doesn't give a full answer to be afraid versus not to be afraid. There's a little bit more to it.
Before, when he was up there, he didn't have the Torah. When he came down...
As he says, what I was going to say also. Hazaku Ba'uch. The difference is, when he went up, he didn't have the Torah yet. The minute he had the Torah and the mitzvot, his power grew exponentially. His potential, his abilities, his strength, his courage was much more powerful because he had the Torah. And with the Torah, you're not scared. When you have the mitzvot, when you have HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's nothing to be scared, which is why God sent the angel of death to show him what the Torah is capable of doing, even to a human being. It's capable of protecting him from the strongest of angels. That's Kiddush Hashem. Not only this story, I'll tell you another story about Moshe Rabbeinu versus Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, which is something the Or HaChaim HaKadosh writes. We know Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went to split the sea, did it happen right away? Did the sea split right as Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm going to split the sea? No. The sea refused to split from Moshe Rabbeinu. You know when it finally split? When God commanded the sea to split through the staff, it went ahead and it split. It listened because God told it to do it, not because Moshe Rabbeinu did. Now that's very interesting, because later on in history there was a holy man, holy rabbi. His name was Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. It says one time Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair needed to go to a certain city. Why did he need to go? He needed to redeem a certain woman who was taken captive. She was kidnapped. She was taken out into captivity to a foreign country, to a different land, away from all of her home, or away from her friends. And Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was a righteous man. He collected money to go and pay off as a ransom to get her back. And in his journey, he arrived by a river. This wasn't a small river, it was a big river. And the river was dangerous a little bit to cross. It was possible to cross, but it was dangerous. The name of the river was Gina'eh. It's called Nahar Gina'eh, the river of Gina'eh. And he says to the river, Gina'eh, Gina'eh, halok memecha. The river Gina'eh, split your water. It commands it to split. The river says, I'm not splitting. You're doing the will of your Creator, and I'm doing the will of my Creator. My Creator said for me to flow. You have your mitzvah. My mitzvah, I'm performing. I know 100% I'm doing what I was commanded to do. You are going, maybe you'll succeed in redeeming her, maybe you won't succeed. So it's 50-50. You'll do the mitzvah, you won't do the mitzvah. I'm not splitting for you. Listen, the river didn't want to split for Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. You know what he did? He said, if you don't split for me, Gozerani shelo ya'avu alecha ma'im le'olam. You're not going to split. I'm going to decree that there's not going to be an ounce of water in your river. I will decree, I'll make a gzera, and they'll have to keep it. The river hears that, it says, okay, it splits. Right away, it splits for him. He says, wait up, 1 second, there's another Jew over here, he's going to make matzot. And he has wheat, and they can't get wet. Make sure you remain open for him too. And the river remained open. There was a goy, an Arab, that was together with them, accompanying them on the road. He said, also for the Arabs, so they don't say we're only making miracles for ourselves, but not for our accomplices. So for the Arab too. It split, some opinions 3 times, some opinions once for all 3. But think about it, it doesn't make sense. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't split the sea. When the whole Jewish people were at risk of their lives, the sea didn't want to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. All the Jews could have died. The sea said, no, I'm not listening, until God came down and said to split. But here's Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who's many years later, is not Moshe Rabbeinu. He's not as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. Lo kam navi od ke Moshe. Yet, he's able to decree on the sea, the river is afraid and splits. How do you understand this? Says Or HaChaim HaKadosh, I'll explain it to you. Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to split the sea before the Torah was given. Torah wasn't yet given. To split the sea before the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu was created on day 6. The rivers were created on day 3. Who's older? The rivers. They didn't want to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. Until God came and commanded, God is before everything. So the sea split. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, he had the Torah. With the Torah the Torah was created on day 3, on day 6. When was the Torah created? Before the world. Generations. 793 generations before the world was created, the Torah was created. So therefore, when Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair didn't come from his own strength, he came from the strength of the Torah. And the power of the Torah to split the sea is no big deal. Once you have the Torah, it's no big deal. Now, we see the difference between Avraham Avinu and Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. What's the difference? Because Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, they sacrificed their lives after the Torah. After they're commanded. After they have all of this power, this immense tool of the Torah that gives a person courage and gives a person strength and allows him to stand up to angels and allows him to do miracles. Oh, so you gave up your life, but you have the Torah. You have the command. It's possible to be done. So Malach will save them. An angel could save them. That's good. Good enough. Avraham Avinu, he did it without the Torah. He did it without a command. did it on his own. That's much more difficult to do. Therefore God said, I save him. I'm the one that's going to go down, and I'm going to save him personally. Avraham Avinu was unique. It was more than Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah. Nevertheless, the miracle of Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah was immense. Not only were they saved, a person goes into a fire. Forget going into a fire. Let's say you make a barbecue. Let's say one day Abba decides, Abba and Ima, they get together, they say, we're going to make a barbecue, and you have a nice barbecue. You go out for a good hour, you start making steaks, you make hamburgers, you make hot dogs, you make everything. And then, all of a sudden, you come back in. You go to Beit HaKnesset, you say, wait a second. Smell like there's fire. It smells like smoke. You say, oh yeah, because I did a barbecue and all of the smoke, it came onto my clothing. You know, Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah, they were in the fire. They weren't next to a fire. In the fire! Their clothing, nothing, no burnt signs. Their hair, usually hair, you put hair next to a fire, it easily burns. It burns very quickly. Their hair, nothing. Nothing, hair, clothing, everything, 100% smelled good. You would come next to them and you smell it, wow, it smells like perfume, cologne smells like. So they said, well, it's a miracle. Why did they deserve such a miracle? Why did they get such a miracle that not only they were saved, but even the clothing were saved? So I'll explain to you based on the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai says an immense chidush on the Gemara in Masechet Ketuvot. The Gemara says that tzaddikim le'atid lavo, in the future, that tzaddikim will arise. We know one of the things that we believe is the fundamental. Jews, every single Jew must believe and does believe in the idea Tehiyat HaMetim, that the dead that are buried in the ground will rise in the future, will come up and will get their bodies back and rejuvenate, recome to life, and live in the world that we live in. There will be Tehiyat HaMetim, the revival of the dead. So the Gemara says, anybody that gets up in Tehiyat HaMetim, he's guaranteed, if he was mitzvot, he did ma'asim tovim, he'll come and be resurrected. But there's no guarantee that the clothing of the person will be resurrected. Only tzaddikim. The tzaddikim will get up from the dead with the clothing. Bilvushehen. How does the Gemara know this from? The Gemara says, Kal vachomer mechita. Just like to take wheat. This is the whole idea of Tehiyat HaMetim. If a person has a hard time believing, how can a person be buried and then come back to life? So I'll tell you how. Imagine you take a kernel of wheat, you take it and you put it in the ground. You know what happens to that kernel before it starts to grow? It breaks apart. It breaks apart and it gets ruined. It gets like spoiled. Oh, it comes like a little moldy, a little spoiled. And then it starts to develop and sprout. From the spoil, from the rot, develops a plant. And that's how the wheat grows. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what's burial? We bury a person in the ground. That's like planting a seed. That's like planting the wheat. And then the person, it looks like he's spoiling. It doesn't take 1 week. It's a year, 2 years, 3 years. It looks like the body is rotting away. But in truth, it's getting ready to sprout in Tehiyat HaMetim. So if you have wheat also doesn't make sense why it grows. But we just know it does. Yeah, that's just how it works. That's how it works. You take someone from Alaska and you tell him, he never saw wheat in his life. He never saw anything grow from the ground. He just saw ice his whole life. You say, no, I take this kernel, I'm going to plant it, I'm going to have a whole thing of wheat. You say, are you crazy? Where did you get that from? That's nuts. That's crazy. That's insane. No, but that's true. Tehiyat HaMetim is the same thing. That's how it works. Tehiyat HaMetim. Now the Gemara says, but the wheat, when it grows, does it grow just the kernels? No, it has a husk. It has like a covering, like a shell around it, and also like kind of like a fur, it looks like, from the wheat that protects it. So just like the wheat grows, it has clothing, so too, when the tzaddik rises from the dead, he rises with his clothing. So Ben Ish Chai says, what is this coming to teach us? He rises without his clothing? He says, I'll explain to you. The Torah this morning we were learning about this. There's a concept, have you ever heard of Tashmish Mitzvah? Or Tashmish Kedusha? You know what Tashmish Kedusha means? Tashmish Kedusha means, whenever I have something that's holy, like tefillin, and I wrap it in something that's regular, like a cloth, the cloth itself develops holiness. It also becomes holy because it is close to, it's connected to the tefillin, and therefore even the thing that wraps it has a holiness. For example, say you have mezuzah and it has a wrap around it, and you take off the wrap, you're not allowed to throw it in the trash can. Why? Since the mezuzah is kedusha, it's holiness, so what's wrapping it around is called tashmish kedusha. Now listen to this. Ben Ish Hai writes, just like a Sefer Torah. What is a Sefer Torah? Let's say you discovered Sefer Torah pasul. It's missing a letter, it's not kasher, it can't be fixed. Let's say, for example, it's a Sefer Torah that has problems with it, it can't be fixed. What do you do with the Sefer Torah? Huh?
Can't?
Cannot. Let's say it cannot. Let's say it's too much to be fixed.
God.
Let's say, I'm saying a case where it's too many mistakes to be fixed.
Bury it.
What do you do with the Sefer Torah that can't be used anymore?
Bury it.
You have to bury it. You bury it, that's what you're going to say?
I was going to say put it in a bag and bury it.
Yeah, you can bury it. You bury it, not in a bag. What they actually do is they put it with a person who's getting buried, especially if he's a tzaddik, and you put the Sefer Torah with him, and they get buried together. So it's close, not in a bag exactly. But you... Oh, so just like, listen, everything that's holy, you have to go ahead and you have to bury. So Sefer Torah, you can't do anything else with it. If chas v'shalom, burn it or something like that, not allowed to do. You have to bury it in the ground because it's holy, so you have to preserve it. So too the person, a person is like Sefer Torah. The neshama of the person is kadosh. It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's holy. So it needs to be buried. The body itself has to be buried. Why is the body buried? If the neshama is what's holy, so why are you burying the body? The body is tashmish kedusha. Because it services the neshama, it services the kedusha, the Sefer Torah itself. Even the tashmish, even the case around the Sefer Torah has to be buried together with Sefer Torah. So too, the body of the person, which serviced the neshama, must also be buried. It needs to be buried as well. And therefore, everything that is buried because of kedusha, kedusha never ends. It has to come back to life. So therefore, the neshama revived. The body is revived. It comes back to life. Tehiyat mitim. Says the Ben Ish Chai, this is all true for the regular Jew that does mitzvot. Regular Jew does mitzvot, his body comes back to life. But tzaddik is even more than that. A tzaddik, his neshama is holy, but his body, he sanctified it to such a high level that even his body is kedusha. Meaning that tzaddik purified himself so much that the body has the same status of a Sefer Torah just like the neshama does. Because he trained every finger, every limb to only do mitzvot, his thoughts only think Torah. So his whole body is in itself kadosh. So you know what happens to him? His clothing also is revived. Why? Because now the clothing became tashmish kedusha to the body. And therefore the clothing also comes out in Tehiyat mitim because of the fact that it retained a holiness. And that's what the Gemara means, that tzaddik, they come back to life, bilvu shehem, with their clothing, because they perfected themselves, their bodies to such a large extent. Come along Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, they weren't being buried, they were being thrown into the fire. But they were protected not only in the neshama, not only their body, but also their clothes. What is that a testament to? That they didn't just perfect their soul. They perfected the physical elements, the skin, the flesh, the thoughts, every bone of their body was holiness. And therefore, the clothing that they wore, which was attached, tashmish kedusha, was also spared, was also protected. As a matter of fact, 4 miracles happened to Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah. Not 4 miracles. 4 mitzvot that were performed, which in that zechut, Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah were saved. There are 4 different events and mitzvot that were performed. The number 1, Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah deserved to be saved because they didn't blacken their souls, because they were in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. And they still didn't blacken their souls. They kept the Torah and the mitzvot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it midah keneged midah, their garments would not blacken. That's why nothing even looked burnt by Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Point number 2, it says that they went ahead and they were wearing tzitzit. A mitzvah of tzitzit, it was a mitzvah for men and for boys to be wearing the tzitzit. So Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, because they wore the tzitzit, by the way, even girls can have a part in this mitzvah. How do girls have a part in the mitzvah of tzitzit? They can go ahead and they could check to make sure that tzitzit aren't tied together, tangled together. And they could untangle it. They can make sure there's no strings ripped. And then they also have a part in this mitzvah of tzitzit that is a mitzvah essentially for the men to perform, or for the boys to perform. So that's number 2, that they went ahead and they wore tzitzit. The tzitzit protects a person. It protects him physically and it protects him spiritually. That's another reason why they were protected. Number 3, we learned in the very, very beginning, we talked about the fact, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, what was one of the main merits they had in the palace? You remember what happened? In the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, they didn't eat not kasher. They only ate food that was kasher, like the rice, like the beans. They drank water, they didn't drink wine. And because they kept kasher, to such an extent, kasher saved them physically from being destroyed. The 4th thing is actually something that didn't have anything to do with Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah per se. It had to do with their great-great-great-grandfather. Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah were from the tribes of kings. Who knows which tribe is the tribe of kings? Lo Yasur Shevet, from who? Yehuda. Lo Yasur Shevet mi Yehuda. Yehuda was their forefather. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were descendants of Yehuda. If you remember, Yehuda one time had a very big challenge because Tamar, who was essentially his daughter-in-law, was going to be put out to death. She was going to be executed. And how were they going to execute her? In a fire. That's right. Because the Avera, she was the daughter of Shem. And Shem was Kohen, Hu Kohen Le'el Elyon. And as a daughter of a Kohen, a Bat Kohen, Ba'esh Tisaref, when she commits an act of adultery, she must be burned in a fire. So Yehuda was the chief judge in that case. He says, look, she committed what he thought originally she did a sin. He didn't know. He thought she did a sin. So he said she has to be put to death. But she's pregnant. She has to be put to death with her pregnancy and everybody. So it was her and 2 children. Her and 2 children. Yehuda went ahead, and what did he do in the last minute? He ended up realizing, no, wait a second. What she did was mutar, it was mitzvah. She didn't do a violation. So he quickly, without hesitating, in public, in front of everybody, he said, everybody, I have to correct what I did. I made a mistake. Tamar was right. He wasn't afraid to admit. That's why he was called Yehuda. Yehuda means to admit. He wasn't afraid to admit. In front of everybody, not in secret. Okay, shh, hush, hush, hush. I won't tell anybody, but I'll save her. No, he did it in public. Yehuda was willing to go ahead and ruin his reputation, ruin his image, in order to save Tamar and her twins, and her 2 sons. He went and he saved her, and those 2 sons, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, just like Tamar was saved from a fire, they're also going to be saved from a fire. Midah keneged midah. In such a merit, 1,000 years later, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, even if it's 1,000 years later, be rewarded. When we do mitzvot, we have to realize, sometimes we do mitzvot, we say, but I didn't get anything out of it. My Abba didn't get me a present. I didn't get anything special. You don't understand. When we do a mitzvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds on to that mitzvah, and He could pay us back 1 generation, the next generation, for every generation. No, Yehuda did a mitzvah 1,000 years ago. I'm going to reward him. His great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to be saved from a fire. That's the merit. That's the opportunity of what it means to do mitzvot u'ma'asim tovim. Now let's talk a little bit of some of the miracles that happened. Several miracles. Number 1, when Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were thrown into the fire, the fire was in a pit. It's called a kivshan. It's a furnace. The way they would make a furnace is they would dig very deep down, and then it would be like a big, big pit, fill it up with wood, make like walls to it, and then it would be lit, and then they would throw people inside of it. So people were standing far away. Remember, the fire was heated 7 times the normal amount, which was itself very hot. So you're talking about a fire probably no less than the size of this room. All wood burning up. Huge fire. Super hot. You can't even stand 50 feet within the fire. It's so hot. So Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are thrown in to this pit. Now nobody sees what's happening, right? Because it's a pit. It's deep. So everybody's looking outside. They're not able to see. You know what God did? Elevator. He took the pit with its walls. It rose up. Why? So that people are able to see. But still people weren't able to see because the pit rose with the walls of the pit all together. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He made the walls come down. Certain sections of the walls started peeling off where you could see inside what's going on. So God wanted everybody to see the tremendous miracle. So He made it. He lifted it up. Everybody was able to see Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the fire, not being burnt, walking around, remember, together with Gabriel, who was also there alongside with them. This was an amazing miracle, and in truth, at first, there wasn't so many people there. Because usually when there's an execution, people don't want to come and see it. So in the beginning, it was only a few people that were there. A lot of the very important figures and the governors and all these people were there, but not the regular population. So at first, they just said, okay, they're going to get burnt, and then why should we have to see this? All of a sudden, they're seeing an immense miracle happen. What do you think is taking place? People are looking at it, their eyes are opening up. One person says, oh my gosh, look. All of a sudden, a big commotion, people are starting to come and hear the miracles happening, more people are gathering, and now what takes place is the third miracle. A third miracle happens, and that is the fire starts catching people from outside. All of the Rishaim are taken in. There were 4 Malchuyot, it says in the Midrash, 4 different leaders that were thrown into the fire. Even though they stood at a distance, it took them in. Who are they? The governor of the main city. He was somebody that could have stopped all of this. He could have told Nebuchadnezzar, no, we shouldn't really kill them. We should let them live. And Nebuchadnezzar would have listened to his top governor. He didn't protest. He said, nah, let them die. Because he went ahead and he didn't protest, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took him. It was like a hand came from the fire and pulled him in. And therefore he died. There was another person who was the secretary. He was in charge of transportation and traffic. It says that he also could have stopped the whole party from happening. He said, look, it's a valley, it's not safe, its emergency measures aren't in place, we shouldn't be having this party. And he didn't. He let the party continue. He green-lighted the whole thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said he deserves to die. The third person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took was the minister of education. Because they were educating kids in the ways of the Babylonians. And they were Rishaim. They didn't have Torah, they didn't have mitzvot. They didn't want the kids to learn in Jewish schools and to learning about Avraham Avinu and Yitzhak and the mitzvot and the Torah. So therefore the Secretary of Education, who was also Rasha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, this is an opportunity, I'll take him also. They took him. Finally, the fourth person, who was the fourth of the Malchuyot that was taken alive into the pit and killed, was the Secretary of Entertainment. A person in charge of the entertainment, the theaters, all of the shtuyot, all of the different parties they had, the circuses that they had, all of these things that were asur for the Jews to do, but the Jews were getting involved in, that he went ahead and he said, this secretary is causing people to sin, he's also going into the fire. 4 people were thrown into the fire that deserved, either because they didn't protest the cruelty of Nebuchadnezzar, shows you how important it is when you see something wrong to protest what's happening that's wrong. Finally, Nebuchadnezzar himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I don't want him to be killed. I want him to live, to see the miracle, and to live through the miracle. So don't kill him. But the fires went ahead and they burnt parts of his face, parts of his body, in order to give him that sort of understanding, like, you deserve to die also. Your sins, your averot, your terrible acts, that you threw them into the fire, you deserve to die. I'm only letting you live so that you could witness the miracle with your own two eyes and see, and maybe one day you'll do teshuvah. In truth, Nebuchadnezzar did go ahead and to, at least for a few minutes, when he spoke to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, we'll see he did mention, come out the servants of the highest God. He recognized that Kadosh Baruch Hu. At that moment, he realized that God is the greatest God that there is. He's Melech Malchei Melachim, the King of all kings. And even Nebuchadnezzar, who was so steeped in idol worship and all of his gods, said, at least he admitted he's the highest God. Now, what does it mean, the highest God? For us, he's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the only God. But to Nebuchadnezzar, it was something that he was able to believe that God was above all of his other gods. Now, the final miracle that happened to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah was the fact that when they were in the palace, one of Nebuchadnezzar's cruel policies was anybody that was a servant in the palace, even if it was a high position, they gave him medicine or whatever, medication or whatever you want to call it, in order to make it that they won't be able to have kids. They made every single servant a form where he's not able, decapacitated their ability to have children. And Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah also. They were also part of that, and they were not able to have, physically, biologically speaking, they weren't able to have children. When they were thrown into the fire, HaKadosh Baruch Hu healed their bodies. He healed their bodies, and they were able to continue and to be able to have children. So they were zocheh, because of this immense miracle, to be able to come to have children. We still have yet to learn what happened when they left the furnace, and then what happened with the non-Jews, and how did they react to this incident, and also when Daniel did finally return, what happened with Daniel and this image that was set up. We'll see Bezrat Hashem next week. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.